setting.
Family member or friend, you may be the first
Okay.
to notice when a veteran you love has been
Okay.
going through changes. Things like
If we
withdrawing,
could hear
drinking
you,
more, or
that would be
increased anger
great.
could be a sign of a larger health concern, but help is available.
Dad finally went
Miss
to VA
Pam?
for one-on-one and group therapy and got some really great
Miss
tools to
Pam?
help him manage things.
Yes, darling.
Okay, he needs to
Listen
hear
hundreds
you
of
to make sure that
inspiring
we
stories
have
at
you
maketheconnection.net.
on the
Okay,
stream.
all right, I am here.
The veterans in your
All is well. I am here.
recovery is possible.
Okay, I heard her on I heard her on the Facebook.
Oh, okay, very good. All right, well then all is well.
Eleanor's diagnosis
Okay,
is
everybody, hey,
acute
like
myeloid
and share,
leukemia.
like and share. We're talking about U.S. teacher burnout. As of
And maybe
last year,
when
we
we
had
got
more than
here,
300,000
you get a nurse that walks
employees,
around
mostly
with you, like,
teachers
for the
missing in the
first 3
education
days you're
system.
here
Those
to
numbers
kind of
increased by at least
give you the
35%
lay of the
this
land
year.
and where to go.
There's a
They
wonderful
know
book
you're
by
already
Dr.
drowning
Michael
from
Byer,
the news that you're
Pencils
getting and
Down,
why you're
and it
here.
looks at
So
why
don't want you
teachers are
to
leaving,
have
U.S.
to
teachers are
figure
leaving the
stuff out by
profession in
yourself.
droves. There was
I
a
know,
time when
like,
we
you're
honored
here
our
and that you're
teachers.
not supposed to be happy or you're
And
not
when you go around the
supposed to
world to developing
smile,
countries,
but
that is
it's
what they
hard not
do.
to
And
when
we're going to be talking about
there's
Trump and
this
Biden. They are
giant
both on their way to
community of
Michigan to
strangers all
stand
working
with the
towards one
UAW
goal. It
workers.
doesn't
What will
matter where
this
they come
mean? What are
from.
the
It doesn't
politics?
matter what they
Politics has been
believe.
scrambled up. There was a
They are all
time
fighting to end
when
childhood cancer. And I
Democrats
think
were viewed as
that's
the
something
party
that should be
as the party of the
celebrated.
working class. That's increasingly not the view. They're seen as the party of the Ivy League, of the educated elites. And the Republicans are seen as a party of the working man,
60
although their
seconds.
policies are opposite that. So we need to talk about that today as Trump goes to stand with them and as President Biden goes to walk the picket line.
Since I took office. That
You
means we
can't
have created more
make
jobs
this
in 2
stuff up,
years
y'all.
than any
You just
presidential
can't.
term
Woo.
in any time. in
But
2
I did
years.
see President
It's the
Biden at the
strongest
Black
2 years
Caucus
of
this
job
weekend.
growth
He
in
was
history
excellent.
by a long shot.
And so
We also
was Vice
learned that
President
the
Harris.
unemployment rate fell to 3.4%.
Did the grip and grin, took pictures with them.
3.4%. That's the
Well, that
lowest in
sounds crazy,
54
doesn't it,
years.
Pam?
In fact, the last time unemployment rate
But
was
that's
that low.
That's okay.
that's what you
But
call
you
it.
did. That's all right.
We call it the grip and
That's
grin.
right. That's what it is.
Okay.
That's right.
But they're all very friendly, very warm, and it was great. I'm gonna post some pictures from the caucus weekend. I was my brother Jonathan's plus one.
10 seconds.
Okay.
I'm no lady. I'm his sister.
You're listening
You can't
to
make this
There
stuff
you
up. Oh, there you go. Who is she? She's my sister.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Oh, yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Monday, September 25th. Getting a little bit of feedback. It is a joy to be with you on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Carol, I see you out there in the hills of Beverly in LA. Michael Ann, I see you, Andre, I see you, Daryl and Shirley. And Dave and everybody, like and share. Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia, let us not forget. Everybody like and share, like and share. Let's talk about Biden and Trump both going to stand with the UAW workers. What will that mean? It seems like American politics has really gotten scrambled over the last 40, 50, 60 years. LBJ signs the Voting Rights Act. He said, I've lost the Democrats in the South. And that indeed has happened. But with Reagan, even though he was an absolute corporatist who oversaw the beginning of the biggest mass wealth transfer in history, he was viewed as a working man. He is a former president of the union, SAG, right? But he was put into place, and his whole career was guided by big corporations. They made him a corporate spokesperson in the 50s. They ran him for governor in the 60s, and they started running him for president then. But somehow or another, he's viewed, and the Republicans are now viewed as a party of the working class, and the Democrats are seen as a party of the elites. But if you look at the pundits on TV, every other person that the Democrats have arguing their case, union leaders, not union workers, not working people, but people from the Ivy League. I'm not mad about that. I'm just saying, if you want to make this case, you better get some people who have to live it every day. So we're going to be talking about Biden and Trump, what is going on. And of course, these numbers for Biden are not promising, but, we'll see how that all goes. The big poll is in November of 2024. That is what matters. And really in the primary season, because we still don't know who the nominee is going to be, nor should we. All right, everybody. We're going to be talking about teacher burnout. Teacher shortages have grown since 2023. We found that there were teacher shortages of up to 300,000 teachers and other educators, but mostly teachers in 2022. In 2023, the numbers increased by more than 35%. What's going on? Why are teachers being burned out? Can they afford to live in the cities where, can they afford to live in the cities where they work? No. Are they spending money? And they don't make a lot on their classrooms because of supply shortages? Yes. Are they in mental health crisis? Yes. Are they under stress? Yes, 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 yes. Dr. Michael Byer is going to talk to us about it. He's got a fantastic book that everyone should get out and support. It's called Pencils Down. Amen to that. So let's get to that. And of course, Dr. Shanita Knight with infection prevention and good news with Pam Morris Walton. I want to hear from you today. Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-WCPT. What do you make of Biden? Well, I'm not surprised that Biden's going to be on the picket line or be talking to, he's going to be on the picket line. Now, former President Trump is going to be talking to the workers. What's that going to be like? He's supposed to be standing with them. So you tell me what you think. How is that going to work? 773-763-9278. Here's some of the headlines. The Writers Guild of America and Hollywood Studios reached a tentative deal. What to know? According to Washington Post, if approved by the union's membership. Yesterday's agreement would end the writer's strike that has halted most TV and film script writing since May. The WGA, the Writers Guild Association, didn't share terms of the agreement, but said it was exceptional. It came after 5 straight days of negotiations. Studios need to start talks with the much larger actors union on strike since July. We'll see how that is going. Time is running out for lawmakers to avert a government shutdown. House Republicans will try to appease far-right members of their caucus by pushing long-term spending bills through the House. They may not have the support to even start debate on the bills. Hard-right Republicans are saying that if McCarthy averts the shutdown and negotiates with Democrats, his job will be not just in peril, they're going to get him out. Remember, that was the deal that he cut at the beginning of the year to become the speaker. What is he going to do? Is he going to save his job or the country? A senior senator from New Jersey was indicted on federal corruption charges, even after Democrat Robert Menendez for years. Of course, he was indicted in 2015, but now people are saying that this indictment, well, this powerful figure is in real difficulty. Indeed, now you have more and more Democrats who are calling for him to resign, although we've not had the trial yet, right? Innocent until proven guilty. Doesn't look great, but we still don't know. Powerful figure in New Jersey politics and in the Senate, where he led the powerful Foreign Relations Committee. He and his wife were accused Friday of taking bribes and cash and gold bars in exchange for helping the interest of Egypt's government. The CDC recommended an RSV vaccine for pregnant women. We're going to be asking Dr. Knighton about that. And scientists found the most intense heat wave ever recorded near the eastern coast of Antarctica. In March 22, temperatures spiked 70 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. According to a recent study, in Chicago, we'll have a high of 71 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 66 degrees, and thunderstorms. In Major League Baseball, the Twins 9, the Angels 3, the Cubs 4. The Rockies 3, the White Sox 3, the Red Sox 2. In the NFL, the Chargers 28, the Vikings 24. Oh, come on, Chicago, Kansas City 41, Chicago 10. The WNBA playoffs, the Suns 78, the Liberty 63, and the Aces 97, the Wings 83. Those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278. What do you think of Trump and Biden going to stand with the workers? And actually, President Biden is going to do more. He's going to walk the picket line with the workers. Right. Call me at 773-763-9278. Will this be a game changer? We'll see. Pam Morris Walton, the iconic Pam Morris Walton, Of course, our gospel sister, well, in the world of the church, that is who you are. And I'm so honored that you're with us
Sweet.
every day. Well, I think of Mary
Thank you.
Mason
Thank
in
you.
Philadelphia. I think of Irene Ware in Alabama. These are the people who've had the power to, and they have used their spotlight to lift and grow some of the biggest artists in the world of church music. But they also go and pray with you. They
Wow.
also go and sit with you. Very few people have had that power. Martha Jean, the Queen Steinberg up in Detroit. Oh, I know you. I know you. I know you. I grew up with all of you. And so it is a joy and an honor, a profound honor for you to be with me. I guess every other Monday, because of course you're leading a prayer line too. And I know you've got to depart to go to that, but
Yes.
there is still good news.
Yes.
The name of your book and how we can get it. I never want people to forget that.
It is good morning. Good morning once again to you and happy autumn.
I love you.
I want you to know my book is entitled 57 Days. The Wait for a New Heart sparks a spiritual journey of faith and love. Actually, 7 years ago, September the 22nd, it was that I walked out of the hospital after 57 days with someone else's heart, and I'm doing well. I'm feeling blessed. Good morning, everybody. Let me tell you this. I have the all is well attitude. That's what I have, and I want you to have it too. It's easy to go through life worried about the future, frustrated because a dream is taking so long to come to pass, upset because somebody did you wrong. But instead of complaining about the difficulty, instead of being upset because your plans didn't work out, instead of losing your peace and living frustrated, you need to remember this simple phrase, everybody. It's 3 words. All is well. God is still on the throne. He's still in control. He is directing your steps. He wouldn't have allowed it unless he had a purpose in his life for you. When you're tempted to get discouraged, keep reminding yourself that all is well. When you have this all is well attitude, that's a rest, a peace of mind. It takes the pressure off. You don't live on a roller coaster. You know all is well on the mountaintop, and all is well in the valley. All is well when business is great, and all is well when it's slow. You know God is bigger than anything you're facing. God is bigger than anything that you are facing. When you have this all is well attitude, the creator of the universe will make things happen that you could never make happen. All is well. The number of your days, the number of my days, he will fulfill. All is well attitude is what I give and ask for you to have the rest of the days of your life. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you for that, because God is bigger than any
Yeah.
problem you think you've got. God is bigger than that.
Right about it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. There's
You're
nothing
welcome.
too hard
You're
for
welcome.
God to solve. Thank you for that.
Nothing. All is well attitude. Walk with it. Talk with it. Live with it. Sleep with it. Tell other people about it. They'll leave you alone. Okay.
Thank you for that.
Love you.
I love you too. Needed that
You're
today.
welcome.
All is well, everybody. All
Yes.
is well. All is well. All is well.
All is well.
Call us
Keep
at
that
7.
attitude.
Keep that
attitude.
attitude. All is well. I mean, whew, that is
Yeah.
true. That is so true. That is so true. I mean, because I hit some walls over the past week. And then it just every time I turned around,
Mhm.
God was tapping me on the shoulder, letting
Mhm.
me know that all is well.
Mhm.
And I have to send my love
All
to a
is
young man I met in the airport in Washington yesterday. You put your phone up on the QR code and you're trying to get
Mhm.
the QR code to pull up the menu. I was trying to get something to drink. And I couldn't figure it out. And boy, I was just moving back and forth. And this guy just walked over to me and he took my phone. He said, "Let me help you." And it wouldn't come up.
Oh, wow.
So
Oh,
then
wow.
he pulled out his phone. Not only did he get
Mm.
my soda, because that's what I wanted, and he bought me 2 pieces of pizza. I didn't want those, but I was so touched. And I said, "Well, let me pay you." He said, "Oh, no, 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 no." But we ended up talking for a while, and I have to send him so much love today because I was so touched by that, so touched, so touched. I said, "Justin,"
Beautiful.
I said, just thank you for being so nice. He said, "I really more than that want to be a kind person." I said, "Ouch, there is a difference." He said, "Oh boy, you know." He said, "I
Mm.
thought so. That's why I came over to you to help you." I said, dumb. Yeah, because I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. But I love you. Pam Morris Walton, how can we get your book and what is the name of it?
The book is called 57 Days. The Wait for a New Heart Sparks a Spiritual Journey of Faith and Love. That's the subtopic, but 57 Days is the title. You can get it on Amazon. You can order it at Barnes & Noble. It's iTunes, and it's an ebook. You can also get your autograph, only the paperback copy, at PamMorrisSpeaks.com. PamMorrisSpeaks.com. And you will be blessed because you will get an opportunity to see what I lived with for 57 days. Thanks, Santita.
Sending you
Thank you.
so much love. Absolutely. Dr. Shanina Knighton is with us today. It's always a joy to be with you, Dr. Knighton. Tonight, Dr. Knighton, what do you
Good
want us to know?
morning.
Because we are now in the midst of autumn.
Yes,
And
we
what
are.
does that mean?
So it for one means that absolutely hurricane season still is at play. So even if some of us are not in direct pathway of hurricanes, we still may get the remnants of those storms. It does mean that, like, let's say tropical storms just in general, like, being the offspring of those hurricanes. We also had that because the weather is changing, we might have like some more aggressive winds, which can mean power outages, all of that. But even important with us thinking about the weather changing, we know that it's called fall leaves means fall sneeze. So that means that allergies kick in. There is a such thing as fall allergies because of the wet leaves and the dander. It also means that people will be dwelling more indoors. And so because they'll be more indoors, that means that there's a higher risk, of being able to transmit germs. So I always tell people as we're thinking about dwelling more indoors, it's important that we consider having ventilation. So making sure that the air is exposed in order for you to be able to have a good exchange of clean air. It also means as well screening individuals. So when individuals do come to your home, it's saying to yourself like, hey, I'm trying to stay healthy for the season. If you're feeling a little bit under the weather, as much as I want you to come, I want us to both stay healthy. So making sure that you're having those conversations ahead of time. You will get people that'll come and they'll say like, hey, they'll say like, I'm sneezing, or, I just got allergies. And you're like, hey, girl, droplets are still droplets. So you just stay home and you get better and let me know when you're no longer sneezing. And that's the thing that people do tend to ignore. They'll say, oh, it's not a cold, it's just a sneeze. Oh, I'm not sick, I just got allergies. But at the end of the day, droplets are still droplets, and each droplet that comes from your nose or your mouth is still unique to your body. And so what may show up on someone else as being, let's say, an allergy may end up showing up on you as a cold.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So it's just being aware of the germs and the contaminants that are around you and the fact that we can spread them. Is also being aware as well of etiquette of others, meaning that, yes, we are talking about fall season, Santita, and you know how we do around the holidays. We talk more about the exchange of food. We talk more about the exchange in networking and the things that take place and some of the habits that we've yet to learn about. So it just means distancing. It means, of course, making sure that you are protecting your mouth and nose. It also means that you're screening individuals. It means that also assuming that cough syrups do not work for absolutely everything, especially for individuals that have high blood pressure. And so sometimes it's just recognizing that if your body is ill, it may not necessarily be going through a cold. It may just be trying to get rid of something that your body also did not want. So inflammation is a real thing. Droplets are a real thing, but it's just being aware that you don't want other people's droplets.
But how do you, but I mean, guess my question is, how do you know what is what?
My thing is assume that it's all something that you don't want. Meaning, I don't think if somebody came and they told you like, hey, oh, I sneezed and some droplets got on you, but it's just allergies. I don't think that's going to make you feel any less comfortable if it was that, or if they told you that they had COVID, or if they told you that they had the flu, because those droplets still do contain contaminants. And so it could be viral, it could be bacterial, you don't know. And so the thing is you want to assume that individuals that sneezing and coughing, you want to assume that everybody has some sort of contaminant or is ill. And you want to protect yourself as such.
Okay. All right. So, and now is the time. Do you vaccinate your children now, or should that have already happened?
It is recommended that if you are going to do vaccinations, vaccination season typically happens between September and December is what's recommended. And that is because it takes time in order for things to ramp up in the body. And when I'm saying ramp up in the body, that's enough time for the antibodies to be able to build towards whatever predicted strains there are. Meaning that if it is the flu vaccine, it's predicted that there are certain strains that will be bad over here. And what will happen is if you get it between September and December, that gives the body time for it to wean off by the time the end of the season comes, which is expected to peak. And this happens every year. So it peaks somewhere between December and February. In terms of flu season.
Dr. Shanina Knight and everybody
yeah.
Oh, no, please.
I was just going to say it's expected the same thing for COVID as well, or anything else that they're typically trying to vaccinate against is taken on a certain season. And Santita, maybe not today, but I think I should probably tell people that our weather and our cold seasons follow Australia, who is a whole season ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so typically when predictions are made, they're following their seasons, trying to predict ours.
I've looked for them for healthcare, even for diets. They're always just ahead of the United States. Everybody, think about it. Jenny Craig, did her best testing, her first testing over in Australia, for example. I'm the diet expert. Hey, everybody, let's talk about this teacher burnout. Last year, we found out 300,000 of them and other educational professionals and paraprofessionals just were burned out. They left the U.S. school system. But now those numbers have risen by at least 35%. What are we going to do? 45% of America's schools have a teacher vacancy. Now we're in the midst of it. Our children are now back at school. What does that mean? And what can we do to make things right? If we're going to put 62% of our budget into the Pentagon, can we just put a little bit more of that into education? Some people actually want to abolish the education department. Have you ever heard of it? Have you ever heard of anything so insane? How are we supposed to make people, how are we supposed to educate them? Academically, vocationally. If you want to be a great judge, if you want to be a great nurse, doctor, you've got to get an education, everybody.
I get it.
Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. It's insane.
Listen, you just hit a button because like literally, hold on. My kid's school has switched already.
To what?
Meaning like last year, it was an issue with teacher turnover. This year so far, they done already had 6 teachers leave. And my daughter's favorite teacher is leaving this upcoming Friday.
6 teachers have left your children's school
6
already?
6 teachers have, yes, already. And my daughter was like distraught
Absolutely.
She was distraught last Friday because one of her teachers that she's had from 2nd grade through 8th grade, it must be bad if he's talking about he's leaving literally this upcoming Friday, and we not even through the first half of the school year. It is. And I'm talking about, she was like, Mom, I can't stop crying, and You know, can you order this?
Sending Dr. Byer through.
Going away gift. Like it really is.
No,
but
it
this
is. It is.
and I thought
That
about
happened to my
switching
brothers.
schools, but
Yeah, no, that happened to
yeah,
my brothers. I remember they
it's
came home
happening
one
everywhere.
Friday crying. The girl, this is 40 plus years ago. And my father was like so alarmed because my brothers were, Jesse and Johnny were distraught because by the time we got to fifth and sixth grade in our grammar school, two teachers handled the class, right? And Dr. Byer, welcome to the show. I've got Dr. Shanina Knight, and she's going to be listening, and she might just jump in. She's an infection preventionist,
Good morning.
registered nurse, college lecturer, and she was just saying that her would you tell him what happened at your children's school? What just happened?
Oh yeah, no, but I'm saying that whole they left, but they've been having a high turnover of educators. And I'm trying to constantly work to understand because my kids are frustrated, you know, and rightfully so. Like one of the things that we try to do and preach, and this is just any parent, is try to be consistent, you know, try to be consistent and try to have some sort of schedule. But how do you get into some sort of learning rhythm or you find that school is excited when you can't even, when you like, oh, well, it's cool this week, but that teacher might not be there next week. Or mom, it's fun, but I don't want to get too excited because they might not even stay. Like that's bad for a kid to even kind of like predict because they can't keep consistent educators.
And it's a horrible thing because I have to tell you, I know when, you know, my brothers lost a teacher. I mean, fortunately, my father knew some people at the Board of Ed, including the superintendent. And he called, I remember because my brothers they were crying, but the whole class were crying. So they were talking to other parents too. My father and mother called other parents. They were like, what happened? Because it was like in the middle of the school year, their favorite teacher was being taken from the school. My father said, you can't do that to these kids. Well, what are you doing? I mean, they have a relationship with this man, you know, and he understands how they learn. That's crazy. 16.
I agree.
Oh wow, that is horrible.
Personalities, like building that culture, like all over again. Like no, it's the real thing. And the ironic thing is,
60 seconds, everyone.
My husband had talked about like switching schools for a while now, but to my understanding, this is a common thread everywhere. And even listening to you today, you further confirming that with how high the turnover rate is.
Stand by. We're coming right to it. This is horrible. And it's getting worse. I mean, I don't know how America expects to go ahead with with children not getting taught. That's crazy. So stand by. We're about to look at this, and and jump in, Dr. Knight, because you're a parent who's dealing with this.
Yeah, thank you.
No, stand by, and I'll tell folks you want us to jump in. They're jumping all over Dr. Byer. And you can put me on mute again just very briefly because I'm about to download something, Devin.
Okay.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. At the top of the hour, we're going to be talking about Trump and Biden going to the UAW workers to stand with them as they strike. What is Trump going to do? What is President Biden going to do? I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. What will the optics on all of that be? And what will actually happen? Right? So call me 773-763-WCPT. But right now, let's talk about this teacher shortage. Last year, the numbers were just stunning. We saw that 300,000 teachers and school staff, the professionals and the paraprofessionals, left the profession. They left. This year, the numbers have gotten worse by 35%, according to this study. And at least 45% of America's schools on any given day have at least one teacher vacancy. What is happening? What is happening to our teachers? Why are they being burned out? Well, they don't make enough money. Yeah, they go on strike. and $60,000, $70,000, 80 might sound like a lot to you. It's not. You know that. When people who make $100,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck in the United States today. And who is more important in the life of your child than their teacher? Who? Why don't you pay them what you pay a banker? And I promise you, that would weed a lot of people out. It would weed a lot of people out. And we need to do that. Pay the paraprofessionals. These people take care of our most precious resources, our children, every single day. But they're being burned out and they're leaving the profession. So what's going to happen to our children? 45% of America's schools have at least one teacher vacancy every single day. What's happening? Leaving by the hundreds of thousands, by the tens of thousands. Something is going on here. There's a tremendous book. I just got a copy of it. Dr. Michael Beyer, who you have heard on the show. I just got the book because I said, wow, pencils down, career journeys of educators who've left the profession. And what we can learn, this has created a crisis in education, everybody. And I think that now that we are like a month into school and we're looking at, we're meeting the teachers, because my parents were really big on that, meeting the teachers and exchanging telephone numbers. That wasn't just for Push Excel. Our parents started that when we first got to school. And there was an intimate relationship that parents used to have with teachers. No more. Something is going on. Teachers can't do this. They can't even teach history. They've got to tell some version of somebody else's story. There's a lot going on. So, Dr. Michael Beyer, I want you to talk to us about this crisis that we're looking at, these teacher shortages. They're burned out. What is teacher burnout? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's it's a good question, and I was listening to your earlier guest tonight, and it's a very complicated situation. It'd be wonderful if we could just solve it by increasing pay, although that alone would be a very difficult thing to do given how schools are funded, which are all through local taxes. So people feel and have a lot of ownership, and you hear a lot of people arguing against higher pay who don't even have kids in the district. And so the pay alone is difficult to solve, and it would be nice if that were the only solution, but it's not. It comes down to burnout, which is, to your question, for teacher burnout, a lot of the times we interviewed a counselor, a psychiatrist who said that a lot of teachers she sees, they have compassion fatigue, right? And compassion fatigue is exactly what it sounds, which is you're exhausted from caring for others. And so, there's a few jobs like this. Nursing is very similar in this regard. And people who work in the sector get exhausted because they're constantly taking care of the needs, the emotional, the physical, the psychological in schools, the academic. Teachers take care of all of those for children, and they get exhausted to the point where they can't take care of themselves. They can't take care of their own family, their own children. And it's compassion fatigue, which is one of the leading things causing educators, teachers, and principals to be burned out. And we can look to COVID and the pandemic and say, well, that was a tipping point, and it'll get better from here. And everything I'm seeing, it's not going to get better because teaching has not been an attractive profession for decades. This is why Teach for America exists. Teach for America attracts college students straight out of college, 22 years old, barely able to take care of themselves, and we throw them into a classroom to fill a vacancy, oftentimes in the highest needs districts. And we say, well, just teach for 2 years and you can go get a better job. That's what Teach for America was founded on. And it's evolved over the years. It's gotten better in a lot of ways. But that was founded 20 years ago, if not longer. And that was because of teacher vacancies. That was because of a teacher shortage. It's only gotten worse. And I think with COVID, it pushed a lot of educators, over the limit, and they're not going to come back. But it also taught generations who watched what happened during COVID that teaching is not a fun job in any way, right? And not the jobs have to be fun, but it has to be attractive in some way. You have to feel valued, and teachers aren't feeling valued. Principals aren't feeling valued. You mentioned that your parents were close with. Yeah.
Why can't it be fun? Wait. I mean, I don't want to go. That's the magic of a great teacher. And we still have Dr. Shanina Knight in here, registered nurse, infection preventionist. She is also a teacher. She's a college lecturer. But she said, I've already lost, Dr. Knight, and you said 6 kids in your children's school in the past month?
Oh yeah, educators, yeah, and they're in middle school, and it's been a common thread. But I do agree with what Dr. Byers is mentioning in terms of compassion fatigue. That is a real thing. I know what it is because I experienced that. Like, as being a nurse. And that whole notion of caring, as he mentioned, can be pretty exhausting. And when you mention that whole thing about it not being fun, I'll be honest, Santita, I can imagine what that resonates. I told you I volunteered for summer programs to teach. And when a kid isn't coming in because they don't even have the basic needs met, meaning they haven't ate breakfast, they don't have proper supplies, you're addressing those fundamental things before you can even start teaching someone. And sometimes that in itself, whatever you might have had a passion for thinking you were going to teach, you're now behind on your lessons because you're still having to address these fundamental things that can't be surpassed. Because if a kid has a rumbling stomach and they're hungry, you can't address the fact that you want to teach them and they haven't eaten.
Or if they can't see the chalkboard. I mean, because there was a time when you used to get your teeth tested in public, because I went straight through public schools. You got your teeth tested. You might be too young for this, both of you, but you had to take those little nasty tablets, and then they showed you how poorly you brushed your teeth that morning. Then you would get your eyes tested. And I don't know if provisions were made for people to see the dentist or to get glasses. Although I do recall some people getting glasses, behind those tests. I don't know if their parents got them or not. I don't know. But there was a time when, there was at least some kind of pipeline to a solution because every child, Dr. Byer, cannot see the chalkboard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, children come to school hungry and with all kinds of problems.
Yeah, schools have always been, since the inception of public education back in the 1800s, have always been, a form of community center. It's never been strictly academics. And I think everyone's fine with that. I would argue that the problem is what's pushing teachers to have that compassion fatigue is one, there's a lot more paperwork and bureaucracy that serves zero purpose. And my anecdote, I say, is that when I was a principal, I was forced to download data from one website, put it into a spreadsheet, analyze it, and upload it to another website or another folder, Google folder, for someone from the district to look at. And it was exhausting. I never got feedback, never got input on why I was doing that. And so one day I decided to upload a blank document. I didn't even upload the data. I just said, here's a blank Word document. No one noticed. And that just told me right there that I was wasting my time. No one was looking at it. It was useful for nobody. It wasn't useful for me. I did other stuff I could look at. But teachers experience that as well. There's a lot of paperwork that serves zero purpose because of all of these accountability measures. And the accountability measures are put in, the intention is good, but how it's thought through, how it's designed is not. It's poorly managed, it's poorly thought through. And all these departments, from the federal to the state to the local, and then within the local, you have all these departments, are all piling on with their own initiatives. And it's a stack of initiatives and requirements for every teacher and principal to where they don't have time to actually take care of the children. So that's one big pillar that's falling apart, or not pillar, but one big load that's on teachers' backs, making them fall over. The other load is that the expectations for schools have increased. So there's still community centers, but now we expect teachers to address homelessness, every kind of emotional aspect of children, drug abuse, all these things, but we don't give them the resources. So I had that too when I was growing up. You get your eyes tested once a year at the school. They'd contact your parents if you need glasses. Nowadays, in many districts, they don't have the resources. When I was a teacher, and this was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, goodness, I realized one child couldn't see the board, And so I asked the class, I said, who else can't see the board? Half the class raised their hand. So then I had to work double time to get a bus to bus my class to a special clinic in the city to get their eyes tested. And lo and behold, over half the class needed glasses, never had glasses. How can I teach them to read if they don't have glasses? We didn't get the eye clinic to come to school as regularly as we did as a child. Why? Because of the lack of resources, because of how our tax structure. This goes all the way back to the 80s, right? Reaganomics and trickle-down economics. The money has been seeping out of our schools for generations. You know, my generation, I went to school in the 80s and I graduated high school in the early 90s. We were probably the last one where we had schools that were adequately funded. And it's only gotten worse, and I see no significant change. They got a huge influx of funds during COVID. That was a one-time shot in the arm. It's going to snap back to scarce resources, and everybody's burned out with a level of expectations. And so they're just quitting and then not going into the profession.
Everybody, you've got to get the book Pencils Down, because Dr. Beyer is talking about what's happening to our teachers. Our teachers are leaving the profession. Our children are going to school, and teachers increasingly are not there. 45% of America's schools have a vacancy every single day, a teacher vacancy. Who's teaching the children? How are our children learning to read, write, get vocational training? I mean, because there are two different tracks that we have here. What's going on? I mean, and that's what I'm trying to figure out, because I think our priorities, Dr. Beyer, are really off. They're just off. You can't have 62% of the budget go to the Pentagon and its affiliated entities, not just war, but everything that is war related. And then the next to the Department of Homeland Security, the next to last presidential level cabinet position was created. I mean, that was the Department of Education, Dr. Mary Frances Berry, the brilliant historian, Howard professor also, and the first Black person to head a predominantly white institution, University of Colorado at Boulder, at Denver, back in the 70s. President Carter tasked her with creating a Department of Education. Such was his respect for her. Did he ask her to head it? No, but she did create it. And people want to take that apart. I don't understand that. And I'm trying to figure out who's running this show, Dr. Beyer. I mean, who's setting the requirements for teachers? Who is advocating for teachers? Aside from the union, they do a great job. But is there anyone, is there any kind of appreciation of what teachers go through of what they need in order to teach the children and in order to have a great work experience? But we've got the UAW workers. I promise you, Barry, I'm going to come to you. We've got workers who are protesting all over the country and all over the world, Dr. Beyer, because they're like, I'm being mistreated on the job. I mean, and that I can't help but think that would shape the culture of the classroom if you have a dissatisfied teacher, Dr. Beyer. I mean, if you have a teacher who
absolutely.
Help me.
Mm-hmm. No, and as Ms. Bates said, that when you have a teacher leave, it's traumatic to the students, especially those early grades. It can cause attachment issues to where if kids experience it multiple times, especially in high-need schools that are struggling in other ways, they're going to grow up not trusting schools. They're going to grow up thinking schools are not good places to go, that no one wants to go because their teachers keep quitting. They're going to have very negative experiences. It's going to be significant obstacles and cause long-term effects. But to your question, who's advocating for schools? I would argue that no one's in charge. We're in a society where, for better or worse, usually better, in a democracy, it comes down to the people to demand change. And I think there has been a recognition of the leaders, the elected leaders who are temporarily in these positions, that we have to be smart about accountability measures and stop just piling on more and more and more. We need accountability measures, but the way they've been doing it for the past 20, 30 years has not been smart. It's just been, they've overdone it and not done in smart ways. And so there has been a recognition that, okay, well, maybe we have to focus on the culture of the schools and make sure that teachers aren't being burned out, that principals aren't being burned out. But it's always a lag time, with government and with any organization. It's always a lag time when you recognize signals and you start pivoting. And we're starting to see a slight pivot, but unless we step on the gas here, it's going to take 10, 15 years to get there. And we saw a lot of emphasis on this after COVID when we realized teachers were at a breaking point. I've since noticed that the talk and the emphasis on teacher burnout has lessened. You know, Biden was saying, well, maybe we should have a national teacher salary expectation. I haven't heard that discussed in quite a while. You hear Cardona, the Department of Education Secretary, focusing on this a little bit, but he's not as big of a voice as Arne Duncan was under Obama. You know, and I think they have to have an initiative to really focus on this very critically, to focus on the culture and the well-being of teachers and principals, because it starts with the principal, right, in the school. And I would even argue the district leadership. The district leadership is burned out. Superintendents are leaving. It has to start at the top of the district and roll down and then roll back upwards. It has to be a holistic and a whole method to it to make sure that the negative stuff isn't just rolling down on the teachers, and that the principals are there to model how to have work-life balance. And it's just not happening because the expectations for everybody are just impossible to meet. That's why I would never go back to education. It's you felt like
wait a minute. What did you just say?
Maybe one day. Maybe one day. But right now I'm enjoying outside of the school because it felt like Sisyphus, especially in the South Side of Chicago, where you know I felt responsible for trying to help absolve or not absolve, but resolve a lot of the negative issues that came from, you know, generational endemic poverty, which is caused by segregation and redlining, et cetera, et cetera. But you feel responsible to try to, you know, catch these kids up, and it's impossible to do. And, you know, you just can't work in conditions like that. No one can. But even in the schools, like on the North Shore suburbs of Chicago, teachers are feeling it. They might not have teacher shortages. There's a wonderful report from the Illinois State Board of Education that showed that not every district is experiencing teacher shortages. Many districts might not even think there is one because they get plenty of applications. However, what's happening is that teachers are leaving struggling districts or struggling schools and going to what they believe are better schools, right? Very often they experience just as much pressure as I did. I went from, you know, some of the poorest neighborhoods in Chicago to one of the wealthiest. And I found that it's just as stressful, but in different ways. However, these wealthier districts and these wealthier schools aren't experiencing a teacher shortage as much. However, I would argue they are still experiencing the negative effects because when you have a pool of workers and it shrinks, it's not going to sound good when I say this because, you know, the union will especially take umbrage, but the quality of the worker pool suffers, right? So when it shrinks, the quality suffers. And so those wealthier districts, they're going to get as many applicants, but not as quality and not as diverse, right? And we're seeing that as well. We've seen that for 20 years. Fewer Black teachers go into the profession. And they're critical to the success, especially of our Black students, because they need to have someone that they can connect to, they can model. We need windows and mirrors, people you can look and learn from through their different cultural experiences, and people you can look to and see yourself in. And so if schools don't have Black teachers, including predominantly white schools, that's not a good thing for our society either.
I've got about a couple of minutes before we go to break. What do you want us to know? Because I really want you to come back and talk about this, because we've got to put teachers at the center of this conversation. When we see them go on strike, we're like, oh, they just want more money. I'm like, no, people want some respect now.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I'll say is that it's completely solvable. In fact, you know, I outlined 5-6 solutions, and some of them are moonshots, like federal funding. Make it federal funding so it's not state and local taxes, which fluctuate and which are open to these huge, nasty arguments about local taxes. So have it funded more from a federal level. That's a moonshot. That's not going to happen in my lifetime, unfortunately. But what's solvable, what's very fixable, is to address the culture in schools, and there are data points you can look at and measure to determine if your culture is moving in a positive direction or a negative direction. And that negative direction will lead to burnout. The positive direction will lead to it being a more attractive place to work. Corporations do this, have done this for decades. There's a top 100 places to work, right? Well, how do you get there? It's not just pay. They get there. They get on that list by being good places to work. They've been doing this for decades. We don't see this in schools. I asked superintendents and principals across the country. I said, "What are you doing for well-being?" And they'd rattle off a long list. And I'd say, "This is great, but it sounds like that's all for students." And they look at me like dumbfounded, like, "Yeah, of course. That's what well-being is for. Well-being is for students."
No.
Yes, but if your teachers are burned out, if your principals are burned out, how do you expect them to create a classroom that's safe and inviting for those students to achieve well-being? It's impossible. So we have a chain that's broken. 2 key links are broken, 3 even. At the district level, that staff is burned out. They're not getting the well-being. The principals and the teachers, those are weak links. And then we expect some kind of magic to happen to where the child suddenly somehow achieves well-being when all the adults around them are stressed and tearing their hair out. So it's achievable. We just need to admit it and focus on it and work on it.
Funding teachers shouldn't be a moonshot. Properly funding education should not be a moonshot, because I tell you what, Ukraine's getting money. There's no debate in Congress about it. Look, I'm all for freedom and democracy. I want it here first, though. We don't have that yet. And we need this money here. I mean, every child needs a top-notch computer. We need to open these schools early, Dr. Beyer. We need to close them later so people can bathe. A lot of these kids don't have running water at home, or they might not have hot water. Soap and toothbrushes and toothpaste ought to be provided. And that's not too much to ask. It's not. Not when Apple's on track to become $1 trillion company. Amazon too. I mean, really? Come on, everybody. We can do better than that. Barry, I'm going to talk to you about what's happening to the American worker, the teachers and American worker. Dr. Beyer, 30 seconds. What do you want us to know before you go and before you come back?
Yeah, let's work on the culture of schools. Let's work on the well-being of the adults in the building. And I'm always here to help. Give me a call.
Absolutely. Sending you much love, everybody. Pencils down. Get the book. Let's talk about Trump and Biden. President Biden's going to walk the picket line, and former President Trump is going to go speak to the workers in support of their presumption. That's his presumption. What does that mean? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Ooh. Dr. Beyer, thank you so much. But you got to come back.
Thank you.
I think it's something we need to just continue to push,
It's always a treat when I get a text from you late at night thinking, absolutely, I'm always happy.
I got off the plane.
You got an actual copy of my book? Yeah.
Well, I ordered it because I wanted to be supportive.
I thought Chappelle might have sent it to you. Wonderful, thank you.
No, because of course I downloaded the galley, but I said, it's important to buy it.
Right.
But
thank you.
I certainly want my autographed copy, and so does Reverend. So you can give him his separate from mine, of course. No, I got it. You're like, Reverend wants me. Yeah, Reverend wants you both. So forget about me. It's all right. No, I just said,
Well, I've got to find out next time you have an event, because I want to meet you in person finally. So please let me know next time you have a public event, and I'll buy a ticket or whatever you're doing, and happy to go and support. So it'd be lovely to one day meet you in person.
I no. Look, I want to get you involved in Push Excel and some of the things that we're doing. I want you and Reverend, seriously. I mean, you should meet. And so
absolutely, I'd love to.
Yeah, so let's talk about that this week, because I think that's important. Of course, we now have a new president of Rainbow Push. He should meet you too.
Congratulations! I saw that.
And he is an absolute gem. He's just a real blessing. And wait a minute. Okay, a friend of mine just sent me an article on the risk factors in the genetic coding for African Americans with Parkinson's. I'm very interested in that. With Chico, I mean, I have some female friends who have Parkinson's now too. Yeah, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I mean, it's you know,
It's a scary disease.
it is so cruel. I mean, it has been really, it's been very difficult for my dad to have, but he's got it. And the blessing for us is that he has access to health care, to not just health care, he has access to the best. But tell me, just ask me if he pays attention, because he wants to get out here and do this thing and do the work and da 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 da. I'm like, Dad,
Right.
therapy's got to be number one for you. Yeah. So, there's that. So, because the Parkinson's has advanced really quite far with him. But, look, well, no, the thing, when I look at it, and I know, and it's really hard for him, but the way I look at it, what a great life, right? It's been such a great life, and it's not over, but it's like I told Dad, I said, there's some things that you're going to have to do. Well, did he want to hear that? No. I said, well, you always tell me God doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
That's what you told
Sending
me.
Dr. Gibbs, Dwight McKee, and Attorney O'Neill through. No answer from Reverend Yuri yet. I'll try again in a few.
I like the society as much as him.
So, but I'm we're gonna work on getting you before him so that you can talk about what it is that you see. And then, have you met my brother Congressman Jackson?
I have. I've actually met your father briefly as well, just in passing one of these big events. I met your brother as well.
Okay.
Again, I think I can't remember what he was doing at the time, but it was a number of years ago.
Okay. Well,
I doubt he'll remember me. It was again in
passing. No. You'd be surprised. I mean, because there's some people who make the impression, particularly those who are education reformers. That's always, people who are really fighting for our children. You have a special place for all of us. So, I want to thank you for being with me today. But let's talk. In fact, I'm going to speak with him after I get off the air. So let's talk today for sure.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Dr. Michael Byer, everybody, get the book. Pencils down. They're talking about teacher burnout. That's a real thing. 300,000 teachers and staff left the profession. Last year, the numbers have increased by 35% this year. We cannot afford that with our children. And so can't wait to talk with Dwight McKee at a later date about the Ma'afa project at the New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church, about what they're doing. Because, a lot of different entities are having to deal with the fallout of that. So, so stand by, everybody. Terry O'Neill.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Gibbs.
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning. And Dwight McKee.
Morning.
Excuse me. I'm gonna go to Dr. Gibbs first. Actually, I'm gonna go to Barry, if Barry is still there. Then I'm gonna go
dropped.
Oh, okay. Barry, I wish you'd call back. I'm so sorry, but I was, I'm always trying to stay on point. I'll do better next time. But if you all would call in at 773-763-9278. I'm going to go to Dr. Gibbs first because he has to go teach this morning, but we certainly want to hear about, hey, what do you think of what's talk about scrambling the political allegiances. People just, at the end of the day, people are looking for folks who are going to fight for them. Okay. So I'm telling you, your Democratic and Republican hats, that's cute, but that is not where people are. And I'm glad Biden's going to walk that picket line. But
60 seconds, everyone.
But Trump, everybody, he knows what's going on too. Now, did he stand for the workers in his administration? No. But this is politics, everybody. And the optics on this, and by the time he finishes talking, boy, he's going to sound like a union man or working man, more than that, for those people who are not that fond of unions. So there's a lot we're going to talk about today. Okay? So stand by, everybody.
10 seconds, everyone.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Monday, September 25th. Happy autumn, happy autumn. September 25th, 2023. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you. I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please meet them on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I see Dave, you're already over there. Daryl, if you would, get over to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Let's talk about former President Trump, President Biden. They're both going up to Michigan, a battleground state, to stand with the UAW workers. Former President Trump will be holding a rally. The president will be walking the picket line. What do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278. Now, Barry called in. I don't want to jump on the headline that you have, Barry, but you said you felt it was a photo op for both. Ouch. Ooh. Call me at 773-763-9278. What do you think about this? And what about these political allegiances? There was a time when we saw the Republicans as being the party of the elite, the moneyed class. Now they're seen as the party of the working man. They better thank Ronald Reagan for that. Now the Democrats are seen as the party of the elites. You know, everybody went to Harvard, Yale, you know. Yeah, well, those are their pundits on television. And so something is going on here. Something is going on here, and we need to talk about that. Let me get to some of these headlines. The Writers Guild of America and Hollywood studios have reached a tentative deal, if approved by the union's membership. Yesterday's agreement would end the strike, which has been on since May. The WGA did not share terms of the agreement, but said it was, quote, exceptional, close quote. Studios need to restart talks, though, with the much larger actors union on strike since July. Time is running out for lawmakers to avert a government shutdown. House Republicans will try to appease far-right members of their caucus by pushing long-term spending bills through the House, but far-right members of this caucus have told Speaker McCarthy that if he negotiates with the Democrats and the votes are there to avert a shutdown, they will make sure that he is out of a job. What do you think about that? Will he save the country or his job? Wow, let's talk about it. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey was indicted on federal corruption charges. They've been trying to get him for a long time. In fact, remember when he was indicted in 2015? Well, this powerful figure in New Jersey politics, who led the Foreign Relations Committee of the U.S. Senate, he and his wife were accused Friday of taking bribes in cash and gold bars in exchange for helping the interest of Egypt's government. We will see where that goes. The CDC recommended an RSV vaccine for pregnant women. And Usher will headline the halftime show at the Super Bowl. Hey, people were wondering if he had the popularity to do that. Are you kidding? Well, their misgivings were put to rest when they saw the records that he has broken with his Las Vegas residency. Good for you, Usher, in Chicago. We'll have a high of 71 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 66 degrees, thunderstorms. Major League Baseball, Twins 9, Angels 3, Cubs 4, Rockies 3, the Cubs 3, the Red Sox 2. In the NFL, well, we both had a tough time. The Kansas City team, 41, Chicago 10, the Chargers 28, the Vikings 24. In the WNBA playoffs, who's going to be the champion? We don't know. Might be the Sun, it might be the Aces. The Sun 78 over the Liberty 63 last night, and the Aces 97 over the Wings 83. Let's talk about what's happening in Michigan, this great battleground state. It's one of the states they say that you need to win if you want to be president. Well, that is the political calculus, and that is the political calculation that these men, one who is president and wants to be president again, and one who has been president and who wants to be president again, they have made that calculation. Now we have former President Trump, who is going to Michigan. He will be holding a rally with the UAW workers. And now President Biden will be walking the picket line. He's going to walk the picket line a day before President Trump. What do you make of this? 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Many people saying that this is scrambling the political deck, Dr. Gibbs. It was a time when Republicans were seen as a party of the wealthy, of the elite. Now they're seen as a, thank you, Mr. Reagan, the Reagan Democrats. They're seen as a party of the working man. And some people are saying, okay, but while Trump is going to the UAW workers, he didn't stand with them in his presidency. And I just want to know what your thoughts are, everybody. 773-763-9278. What does all of this mean? And optically, how's this going to work out? Not actually. What's it going to look like? Dr. David Gibbs, historian from the University of Arizona. I know you're on your way to class, but you got to help me with this one and help us all with this. What do you see?
I think that what's going on reflects the fact that there's been a very rapid increase in public support for unions in recent years. I think this reflects the public recognition that wealth has become extraordinarily concentrated. It was concentrated really since before the New Deal. And, the public, I think, has picked up on this and are starting to view unions as a potential counterpoint or even an antidote to this problem. And so there's very likely significant popular support for the growing strike in Michigan. And the very fact that both parties, or at least both major presidential candidates, Biden and Trump, are effectively endorsing the strike or coming very close to doing so, this is a reflection, I think, of a public popularity of unions. Now, there's certainly a lot of hypocrisy, actually a tremendous hypocrisy in both sides. In the case of, Trump and the Republican Party, of course, they've always been anti-union. Now, look at Trump's appointments while he was president. They're altogether hostile to unions. The Democrats have been marginally better, but I would say only marginally. Generally speaking, since the late 70s, the Democrats have viewed the unions as obsolete and tried to distance themselves from unions. Biden himself, I think Biden's main focus throughout his career has been foreign policy, American power. I think what is really on his mind is not really so much unions, but the war in Ukraine. That's always been his interest, I think, projecting American power overseas. I think things like, strikes and unions and living standards have been at most an afterthought for him. And I think, though, nevertheless, he is facing a very difficult re-election campaign with polls showing a low popularity for his presidency, and he's trying to, shore up support from a key Democratic sector, in this case, the unions.
So you're saying that you see hypocrisy on both sides. Some people would be upset with you for that, but I mean, have these parties really stood with working people? I mean, and you saw this accelerate under Reagan, a corporatist who projected himself as the working man. I mean, and he could say, okay, my bona fides are I was the head of the Screen Actors Guild when he was a fairly liberal Democrat, if not progressive at the time, but he certainly made a sharp turn to the right. So, I mean, talk to me. Where do you see, do you think this is just optics, or how do you think this is going to play out with the workers, Dr. Gibbs?
I think it's mostly optics. I mean, I think that there may be some substantive turn in favor of unions, particularly among the Democrats, possibly among the Republicans. I think just for electoral purposes. But I think that the long-term trajectory has been hostile to unions in both parties. And I would say Reagan clearly was a big part of this, but let us not forget Jimmy Carter also played a role in damaging unions in America. Some of the top appointments to his administration were economists who were quite hostile to unions. And one could say that the turn against unions really began under the Carter presidency and then was expanded under Reagan. So again, I see this as very bipartisan. This is just where the United States has been going. And it's reflected in declining union membership. During the Eisenhower presidency, 36% of workers were unionized at its high point. And now I believe it's under 10%. If last figure I saw was 9%. And it's going down every year. And that reflects declining political support. Now, can that be reversed? That's the key question. And, perhaps we're seeing a turning point here where the political system will now move in a more pro-union direction based upon public pressure. I personally hope so.
Why did it take this turn away from unions under Carter? Was that just where the parties were going, and what happened?
That's exactly where the parties were going. He appointed figures to the administration who deregulated key sectors, airlines, and then trucking. These were supposed to have major benefits to the public, but particularly airlines, the studies have shown, they produce no benefits in terms of lower ticket prices over the long term. What they did do, however, is they weakened unions. That was their main effect. Trucking in particular the deregulation of trucking was disastrous. A study of trucking in 2000 was entitled Sweatshops on Wheels, Deregulation of Trucking, which was a Carter presidency event that produced Sweatshops on Wheels. And there were other things he did. The appointment of Paul Volcker to the Federal Reserve, basically, monetary policy turned in a direction that was designed to increase unemployment, which was devastating to unions. And so there were a whole series of things undertaken during the Carter presidency. I think Carter himself, I don't think he had any animus towards unions. I think he saw himself as a technocrat, but he was very influenced by the economics of the time, which is increasingly turning to people like Milton Friedman. In other words, sort of free market economics. And I think that was, people tend to think that was just Reagan who did that, but it wasn't Reagan. It was both parties, and it was very definitely Carter who did so as well.
And and even when your politics are anti that, when you're running, it's a very real fact that when you become president, when you get into that power space, these are the people, they give you options. These are the people that you have to work with. I mean, let's just get real about how this works, Dr. Gibbs.
Sure.
And these are the Paul Volckers are the people you have to work with, and you have to work with the people from the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have to work.
Right.
You cannot, because he was not a trilateralist, and certainly Reagan was not, interestingly enough, but he had to bring on George H.W. Bush, who was.
Yeah.
Because in fact, part of his power with white working class people was that he was an anti-trilateralist. He was anti-globalism, and that people forget that about Reagan. I'm just reporting the fact, everybody. Dwight McKee, what do you say? I'm just the weather person. I'm the weather girl. I didn't bring the clouds. I didn't bring the rain. I'm just telling you, get the umbrella before I come to you, Dwight McKee. Attorney Terry O'Neill, what do you make of this? I mean, you pick up the newspaper today, or you go online, you turn on the TV, and you're like, Trump and Biden are on their way to Michigan.
Right. I think that's absolutely right. That the decimation of the union movement in this country has been done by elected officials on both sides. Clearly, the Republicans, as a matter of policy, are terribly anti-union. That's not true of the Democrats. I don't think they're equivalent, but they definitely oversaw the decimation of the union movement, and that's a problem. Now, I will say that I draw, in my mind, there's a very big distinction between "quote-unquote" for the working man, and I want to get back to that in just a moment. They don't see themselves as for working women.
Well, we make less anyway. We make much less anyway.
Sorry?
We make much less anyway, so do we really matter? Is that crazy?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And being pro-union, I think the Democratic Party today is more pro-union than it has been. And I think that that's not because the people who are running the Democratic Party suddenly had a change of heart. It's because people who vote Democrat are very pro-union, and increasingly so, and the Democratic Party is seeing that. Donald Trump has not figured that out yet. He's still doing the Reagan thing. He's still saying, I'm for the working man. So what he's projecting is a return to the 1940s or 1930s, before the union movement really takes hold, and before women are even in the labor market in big numbers. So I think today you're seeing a real distinction between the Democratic Party on the one hand, which is now saying, yes, we support unions. And let me say, it's very important to support the teachers union, the nurses union, and to support efforts to unionize Starbucks and other retail industries, which is where women predominate. You're not going to hear that out of Trump at all. You imagine Donald Trump coming out and saying, "I'm for the working woman," or Josh Hawley, or Ted Cruz, or "I'm for the working man and woman." They're not going to say that, and even if they did, they still wouldn't be pro-union. They would just be for individuals, so-called. And when they say that, that's kind of a dog whistle for I'm for racist, low-paid white voters, because that's who they try to appeal to quite a bit.
You know, Butch is out at O'Hare. Butch, how you doing, sweetie? What's on your mind?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
It's great hearing your voice. I'm glad you called in today. So what do you make of this
Yeah,
visit?
this is my second call. I called when you were gone. I talked to one of your... Yes, and next time, hopefully when you're talking about the election, I'll tell you about the Southern Plan 6. But anyway, all I wanted to say is that Trump said in 2016 that the auto workers make too much money. Today he says they got their back. I think the only thing he's got for their back is a knife. And that's all I have to say.
Well, there you go.
That's it.
Okay. No, you said a whole lot. So call us at 773.
And I'll, like I said, I'm looking forward. I'll look forward when they start talking about the election. I'll tell you all about the Southern Plan 6 and the people with no shame.
But
That's
we
why
talk about the
Yankee
election
snake,
all the time. Yeah. We talk about election all the time. How do you think this will impact the election?
Well, here's how I think it'll impact the election. I think the Southern Plan 1 was Nixon, which is a Yankee snake oil salesman selling the Southern Plan. Right? Southern Plan 2, Reagan. Southern Plan 3, George H. Bush. All Yankee snake oil salesmen selling the Southern Plan. Then we got the Cheney Bush gang, as I refer to them. They were the Southern Plan 5. I'm sorry, 4. Then we have Trump, Southern Plan 5. So 2024 is they're looking for their Yankee snake oil salesmen to push the Southern Plan. I tell you right now, it's going to be DeSantis. That's Trumpism without Trump. And all these rubes will get behind him. All these rubes will get behind DeSantis. Mark my words. So, and that's all I got to say. All I got to say.
You said a whole lot.
And one day my book will be published. Thank God for the good cops. We'd all be criminals, for that is their plan, and that's a fact. Thank God for the good cops, because most don't wear a badge.
Dwight McKee, what do you say about all of this? What about former President Trump showing up for a rally and President Biden showing up on the picket line for the UAW workers or with them?
Well, I think both parties reek of hypocrisy on the union issue. Trump, in his own company, made much of his money by not paying workers who were unionized. He would take their money and tell them to sue him, and had no respect, no regard for the workers that built those casinos for him and some of those high rises for him. Literally stole their money and disregarded them and dismissed them. And so he was the ultimate hypocrite on this issue. The Democrats, much of them breaking the unions came from NAFTA and Clinton sending the union jobs overseas is what was the biggest risk to the union. So a lot of the steel mill jobs and the construction jobs, a lot of the things that the unions made their living becoming was exported overseas under Clinton. And of course, his biggest backer at the time was Walmart. which is probably the most anti-union company in the country. And so there's just both of them reek of hypocrisy. I think that Biden has the most to benefit by going to these picket lines, because if the unions are in fact able to get a quality contract and quality working conditions, then it balances the fact that people are so hungry today and so broke today, and they have these housing issues and these food issues. Well, if these unions are able to negotiate new contracts, it'll help resolve some of that, and Biden be able to get the credit for that, in spite of him being blamed for the recession, and him being blamed for inflation, and him being blamed for a lot of what he's not responsible for, that in fact is happening from the Federal Reserve level, that he has no real control over, but he's taking the blame for.
I've got one more minute before we leave and before you go to class and teach today. Dr. Gibbs, what do you want us to think about as we're watching, I guess the political allegiances are saying in some articles that they've been scrambled?
Well, I think that one of the issues that's going to come up, as already been raised, is that the strike is endangering economic prosperity, that it increases the danger of a recession. And I would just say that's very much the wrong way to look at it. One could say that the real culprit in this respect are the big three auto companies who've had record profits in the last 5 years, have not passed on those benefits to their workers, and therefore provoked the strike. And so it's a question of if this strike ends up increasing the danger of recession, and in fact, if it pushes the economy toward recession, one should put the blame squarely where it deserves to be put, which is on the auto companies themselves and their policies of enriching themselves at the expense of their workers. And so I think that people should be prepared for that accusation and be aware of the context in which the accusation is made. So this is not a problem of the union. This is a problem of the companies.
Everybody, what do you think? Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Let's talk about President Biden, who's going to walk the picket line with the UAW workers, and former President Trump, who's going to have a rally with and for the UAW workers. What do you make of this? Have the political allegiances been scrambled? How will this impact election 2024? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Thank you so much, Dr. Gibbs. And welcome to the show, Reverend Dr. Yeary. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you?
Doing great, thank you. You sound enthusiastic and happy this morning.
It's Monday. Monday.
Okay.
I missed you while you were in D.C. I saw the congressman and talked to him for a good few minutes Saturday morning after the prayer breakfast.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, honey, I just gotten in. Well, actually, I came in from New York. And you get to Washington and you're moving. I wish I could have gone to the prayer breakfast. I mean, but, he looked in on me, said, "You want to go?" I was like, "Really?" He was already dressed. And I was so exhausted. I said, "Jonathan, I cannot get ready in 5 minutes or even 15. He said, "What about 15? No, goodbye." Let me just... Oh my gosh, but I heard it was fantastic. So I am glad.
It was very, very well attended and very nice even with the weather.
Well, that is wonderful. That is wonderful because everybody, please, I had the dinner on Saturday night. I hadn't planned to, because my flight was canceled. Whew. I mean, I was glad to get out of there yesterday. Goodness gracious. So glad. But, there you have it. It's good hearing your voice. And of course, you're on with Attorney Terry O'Neill and Dwight McKee.
Good morning to both of you.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Good morning. Good morning.
Hey, Terry, how you doing?
Doing well. Doing well. Hope you're doing okay.
Everybody, please call us. It's 773-763-9278. Let us know what you think. What you think about this? It's been very interesting. The calls that we have gotten. Barry, he dropped it, but he'd been holding for a minute. He felt that this was a photo op for both of them. It just seems that there is I don't hear a lot of enthusiasm, but I'm just here. So what do I know? But people appear to be just very frustrated with everybody. So we will talk about that.
60 seconds, everybody. 10 seconds.
Thank you.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We have got former President Donald Trump, who is on his way to Michigan to this battleground state. It's very interesting. You also, but he will be trumped, if you will, by present President Biden, who's going to walk the picket line with these UAW workers who are striking. What do you think that's going to do to his corporate support? The big three, Ford, Stellantis, and GM. Is this enough to shore up his support? I mean, as he continues to struggle in the polls. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Indeed, the political landscape has been scrambled. There was a time when Republicans were seen as the party of the very wealthy, the country club said, if you will. Now they're seen as the heart of America. Thank you, Ronald Reagan. And we saw that with the Southern strategy that we were just hearing our dear friend from Mohair talk about, the strategy that that LBJ said, look, by signing the Voting Rights Act, I have lost Southern Democrats for at least a generation. And they've never quite recovered from that. But now you've got President Biden, who is going to stand with the workers, not just stand with them, he's going to walk the picket line. Will that help him with his polling numbers? And what about Trump, who is going to bypass the second Republican debate in order to have this rally with these workers? He's looking to position himself as their ally, although his policies during his administration actually were disfavorable to them. The labor board were disfavorable to unions and to workers. The U.S. Supreme Court disfavorable to unions and to workers. Indeed, this is the most corporate-driven Supreme Court, quite frankly, that we've had in 100 years. So, Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, What do you make of this? I mean, what is actually happening? What is optically occurring with these two gentlemen who are going to be in Michigan within a day of one another?
Well, good morning, Peter, and good morning to my colleagues. Look, what's going on here is a couple of things. Number one, Trump gives himself a convenient excuse to avoid being on the debate stage, even though he is by far the leading candidate for the Republican nominee, and therefore he would certainly qualify to be on the debate stage. But when there's really no pressure coming from the platform, the best thing he can do is to stay out of any conversation that's going to force him to have to defend his current malady, if you will, in terms of his legal issues. It also gives the impression that somehow or other he is supportive of workers' rights. Right? This is where he's going to get himself into a bit of a pinch if he's able to sway. I don't think he's trying to sway union workers. I think he's trying to sway the general public in terms of the impression that he's given. Because associated with unions are certain policy principles that Trump is certainly not going to be for if it's going to come down to keeping his corporate friends kind of happy. So that's going to be a particular problem. The risk for the president, although he's been strong in terms of his rhetoric in support of unions, he certainly said that the big three should find a way to settle the issues so that they can resolve this labor action. Not yet a full strike, but it's a disruptive one because they don't, the big three can't figure out what's coming next. And Ford is like, we're not like them. So let's just kind of stay ahead of the other two, and maybe we'll come out, better in the end. The president has to make sure that he takes advantage of the opportunity not to look, quote, so old. And so if you're out there with workers who are in the prime of their lives, so to speak, and they're working hard, and so he's seen out there, it doesn't give this detached image that somehow or other this dude's too old to be president. Now, the risk is you don't want to have a hiccup. You're going to go walk the picket line. That's different than walking the red carpet. You better make sure that the sidewalks are level, that you don't have a mishap, that no one catches you stumbling, that you don't look like you're too fatigued to be able to stay out there for a while. Because if it's just, a few minutes and then they whisk him away in the car, I think you'll hear the messaging that somehow or other he really didn't come to march with them. He came to take a picture with them. I think the distinctions are clear between the two of them. I think the opportunity is really for more down the road. Here's where the unions will really matter. For the president, if there's a tight race already between him as the incumbent and the former president as his opponent, a third-party candidacy puts a whole lot of pressure on the current president to really come out on top. And so unions typically, when we start looking at mobilizing for elections, number one, they bring their constituencies to vote, but they also help with the ground game when you're trying to do voter turnout. And so I think this is let me take advantage of the opportunity of the moment. I think for both of them, they're looking down the line, if they're going to be tight races in some of these states where you have strong union presence, who's going to need union engagement to help with raising money, to help with voter turnout, and to help make sure that in a tight election, which next November is certainly lining up to be, they come out ahead in what's really going to be an election on the margin.
What do you think, everybody? 773-763-9278. Will walking the picket line move the needle for President Biden to help his polling numbers? He does need help on that. Will this create the impression that former President Trump is an ally of working people? What's going to happen here? If you had to place a wager, Dwight, where would you put your money?
Well, Cornell is one of that to and so it gives a contrast to both Biden and Trump. because he's much more consistent on the issue, has been over the years, and is much more articulate and interpreting the issue. And so that's going to be a factor in how both of them are perceived. If I would put my money on the line, I would put my money actually on the union. I don't think the union is going to have to give either one of them any real credit for their success, because the corporate guys have been so greedy, as was stated a little earlier, and have taken all of the profits out of the company, and the union made so much of the sacrifice in the last 10, 15, 20 years since the recession. The corporate guys really look greedy in more than they have. They made, $40, $50 million on their side, and the unions have raised the good evil thing. The lie David thing really plays out in this fight far more than in a lot of the union fights going all the way back to Pullman. And then lastly, in this contract, ironically enough, what the boss want to do, what the owners want to do, is they want to take the union money and reinvest it in long-range improvements in the technology. In fact, what they're trying to do is use the union's money to put the workers out of business over time. Because what they're going to invest in is robotic and artificial intelligence technology at the expense of the long-range work for the workers and for the unions. And so they want to use the union money to bust the union. And so this really plays itself out as a good versus the evil proposition. I don't think either Trump or Biden will get a lot of mileage out of it, because it plays itself as pure photo ops on both sides.
773-763-9278. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, Terry O'Neill, do you think that this will just be like net zero? I mean, because they're literally meeting each other in the air. Or do you think, will this help move the numbers on Biden? I mean, some of the comments that I'm getting, people don't sound very enthusiastic. And then some other people are like, well, Trump is everybody's getting used. And some people are like, this is, but, well, I mean, and the political system has been scrambled. You don't know who's standing for. Well, you do know that both of these private corporations these privately held corporations are funded by corporations. And I mean, and there we have it. But do you think this can move the needle for Biden at all? I mean, because Trump announced this some time ago that he was going, right?
Yeah. I think Dwight McKee is exactly right. Everything he just said, and I think that whether Biden is able to get his message out that, hey guys, I'm actually pro-union here. It's a tough message for him to send, because he's been such a corporate Democrat all these years. I think a lot of that will depend on how young people decide to take this election. So the younger the voter, the more likely that voter is to be very pro-union. And they're not going to be fooled by, I think mostly younger voters are not fooled by Trump's appeal to quote unquote the working man. And I think younger voters actually hear that there's a little dog whistle in there about the working man being, very racist and sexist, as opposed to unions, which have not always been friends of affirmative action or workplace equity, but have done a much better job in the past 10 to 15 to 20 years of reaching out to their to Black union members and women union members. So there's been change within the union movement. I think younger voters are not going to be swayed by Trump the way Trump is currently holding himself out as for the working man. The question is whether they will be swayed by Biden's "I'm for the unions" message, and whether therefore they will, instead of staying home, come out and vote for Biden. But I think what Dwight said originally is exactly the main thing. This is what the real movers and shakers here are the unions themselves and the ordinary voters that are very much pro-union. So I think that those are the ones we have to look at, and those are the ones that we have to, well, I'll say this, those of us who are very pro-union have been pushing politicians to actually be more pro-union. And the question is whether we can develop that kind of power to force political parties to start actually pursuing policies that help working families. And that's not a slam dunk, but I think we're in a much better position this time around than we have been in the past 20, 30 years.
So you think this could move? Do you think this will move the needle for Biden? I mean, because I don't understand I mean, why are his poll numbers, Terry? And I'll ask the rest of the panel this, but why do you think he's struggling so in the polls? I don't understand that.
Honestly, my sense is that the energy among voters who vote Democrat, that the energy is on the progressive side of the political spectrum, and it is well known that Joe Biden is not on the progressive side. He has never claimed to be on the progressive side. And so I think that's the real thing. The age thing is nonsense. Again, younger voters, the most progressive voters in this country, that's Bernie Sanders. Right? Mm-hmm. So you can't tell me that his age is a problem for progressive voters. It's clearly not. It's his corporate history that is a problem for progressive voters. And I think that's something he needs to overcome. To be clear, corporations are now, after January 6th, a lot of corporations said, we're pulling our PAC money from those 140 some odd senators and representatives who voted to overturn the 2020 election. The corporation said, well, we put you in office, but now we're going to withhold your PAC money. Those same corporations are back to supporting the very Republicans who backed the January 6th insurrection by voting to overturn the 2020 election. So corporations are, again, lining up behind the Republicans, even though the Republican Party is the party of autocracy, not democracy now. And so I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I think that where the unions come down will be important. And whether the unions come down in favor of Trump, that could move the needle. The UAW has not endorsed either Trump or Biden so far in the election, and so wait and see what the unions do themselves. I think they could move the needle this year.
Reverend Uri? Okay, Dwight.
Yeah, I was going to add to Terry's point. And the other thing that Biden is competing against is himself, because he at the same time is want to bring in these 500,000 Venezuelans and give them work visas, which is going to undermine and believe industries, many of the union workers, because now they're competing against workers who are undocumented, ununionized, and don't have the leverage to get, standard contracts, who will be working for under the market value at the expense of a lot of the union contracts. And so the irony is that he is his own competition in terms of the unions being able to trust what his intentions are.
So, but both of these parties, Dwight, they're funded by corporate monies. I mean, that was what we were fighting in the '80s with the Clintons and this sharp move to the right. And quite frankly, while they were the face of it, the parties were moving in this direction anyway. Most people don't know that the Democratic and Republican parties are not government instruments. They are privately held corporations, and they're funded by the corporate world. I mean, what do you think is going to happen here, Dwight? I mean, the optics on this. Because Trump is going past the debate, he said, I'm going right to the people. Do you think this is going to work? Let's just put it right where it is.
Work for who? For either Biden or Trump?
Yeah.
No, I don't think they'll get a lot of mileage out of it. I think that either the poll numbers are not going to move at all on either side of it. I do think that if neither of them showed up, there'll be a price to pay for that. But I think, ironically enough, by both of them showing up, they kind of neutralize each other. I think the independents may get a little traction out of it. I think Cornell may get some traction out of it. And Kennedy, if he comes to the line, may get some traction out of it. But I don't think Biden or Trump is going to get a lot of traction either way.
Reverend Dr. Uri, what are your thoughts?
Well, to the question about moving the needle, during the campaign, there are multiple needles. I don't put a lot of stock in national polls, except to kind of set a benchmark of where you are. So I'm not expecting that you're going to get a lot of needle movement. I'm not even sure that you're really looking for a lot of needle movement because you don't have any place to put the momentum, right? So the goal is to figure out where you are and make sure you're not losing ground so that as you start moving through the primaries and you start seeing the actual results, you get closer to the windows of voter registration and early voting and then actual election day, you now have some basis upon which to kind of create a ground game momentum that turns into actual votes. I think what's happening, though, is to counter the imagery. Trump, trying to detach himself from his legal issues, is now engaged in trying to, quote unquote, look presidential. Biden trying not to look so old, right? Even to Terry's point, that, the age issue is really kind of a distraction from the substantive conversations. I think the big issue for President Biden is what's really the drag on his polling numbers is policy lag. You haven't yet seen the impact of infrastructure, of inflation reduction. And what you're seeing more quickly is the pulling away of the supports during COVID, where he started running against the pushback on the government maintaining its additional income support because you had the issues of supply chain disruption. You had the issues of folks losing the safety net of additional dollars coming from the federal government. And at the same time, the policies that he is passing are not yet catching up to the realities that folks are facing. And so there's a lot of just kind of unhappiness because you don't get the instantaneous result of good policy making. When will you begin to see it? I think they're hoping they begin to see some momentum as you're going through the election season. And so the president has to get out and begin to kind of say, I'm connected to what's going on in the real world, in the real lives of folks that I am appealing to, as will all of the other candidates, so that it then translates into the momentum that we'll see the needle move. I think the needle that you're going to see if you're looking at a dashboard is not the big needle that gets everybody. This isn't going to be a change in the tachometer. You're not going to get some horsepower change out of this, but you may get a temperature gauge just a little bit inside a subset of a group of allies that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party don't need. I think the Republican side is something very suspicious of what Trump's motives are from the corporate. What are you saying to corporate leadership, Mr. Trump, if you're going to stand with the unions in this moment? I think that's going to be the big question. So watch it. Popcorn is my thing. So I'm here for all of it, and I got some popcorn for this too.
Well, to Terry, to your point, I think the corporatization of the Democratic and Republican parties, and and the fact is, uh, President Biden throughout his whole career has been a very corporate friendly politician, corporate friendly Democrat. I mean, how will this play out in about a minute? Because he's really struggling right now, and they're trying to mitigate that, and they're looking for ways. And I mean, he's not just going there; he's going to be walking on the picket line, right? And that's an important thing to do. I'm not diminishing that at all. But will it help? And I guess ultimately, will it help the workers? Will it help? You know, because while he's there, have Mary Barra and Jim Farley and the gentleman from Stellantis, have them sit down with Fain. Just go sit down, roll up your sleeves, and make that happen, Terry. How about that?
I mean, I think I think Wright again was exactly right. The optics of not going to the picket line, and he could really hurt himself by not going to the picket line, and Trump as well. But going to the picket line, the benefits of that are a little murkier. If the unions come around and endorse him, that would move a needle. But there's a lot of needles around here that need to be moved. And I honestly think what is holding the Democratic Party back right now is the struggle within the party between the corporate Dems and the progressive Democrats. And what worries me very much is that the way that internal struggle is going to play out is we could very well lose, right? We absolutely could lose the presidency to the Republican Party is fully autocratic Trump. They are moving towards fascism on a road that seems to be very slick. And I don't see any Republicans who can really get traction against that.
Because we're not having debates. And and there's some people that we dare not mention. I mean, we've got those of us on the left have to watch it too. Because because what we're doing, you're not supposed to mention Robert Kennedy. Marianne Williamson said maybe, but we're not supposed to have any debates. I mean, come on, that is all fascist. It's totalitarian. It's autocratic. It is crazy, and we have to be careful to not become what we say. Oh, look at the Republicans. I'm like, no, look at yourself. We're doing the same thing. Terry, the last 30 seconds belong. Well, actually, I don't have 30 seconds. Stay right here because I want to get some closing thoughts from you, Terry O'Neill, and you, Reverend Dr. Uri, and Dwight McKee on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Devin, thank you for a great show. God bless you, everybody. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. I mean, Terry, we're doing the crazy things. It's crazy. It's mean. And it's like, no. I'm like, no, not just the Republicans. We're doing this. We're doing it.
Yes.
And, and I just think it's very dangerous. And now we have a president who, on the corporate side, has been indistinguishable from Republicans because of his corporatist leanings. Okay. And you know what? He's responded to the zeitgeist. And his politics have kind of moved into something else. We're not talking about his personality. He's always been a nice guy. We're talking about the politics. In the meantime, the UAW, they're still very far apart, Terry. Stellantis and GM and Ford, they're laying off, and Ford, they're laying off workers. They're laying them off. So what is this? What's it all about, Alfie? There we go.
Yeah, Santita, I think so. So when Joe Biden came into office, he was actually he did allow progressive Democrats, other progressive Democrats, notably Elizabeth Warren, to have a very loud voice in his appointments. And sure enough, Biden's appointments over the years since he's been president, he has put into the National Labor Relations Board much more pro-union people, whereas the Democrats, the Republicans, especially Trump, packed the NLRB with specifically anti-union people. So Biden has changed that, and that's a distinction. even though he is a corporate Dem, he has moved to put more progressives in office. He has put into the Federal Trade Commission, which is an antitrust, which is our antitrust agency, some people who actually believe in antitrust laws for the first time in decades. So he has moved, and he has. I guess I'd say this: he has listened to and acted on the voices of the progressives within the Democratic Party. He has also put his thumb on the scale for the corporate Dems over and over and over again. And that's the struggle within the Democratic Party. The Republican side, they struggled between Trump, the autocrat, and sort of the Mitt Romney type of Republicans, traditional anti-union, anti-worker, pro-free market people. But that struggle is over. That struggle is over. Romney is gone. Liz Cheney is gone. And so the Republicans they're not struggling anymore. I think that's why Trump is the nominee. He's the presumptive nominee. There's no way he won't be the nominee. And so I think you're looking at the real danger for me, for Biden, is that the Democrats still haven't resolved their struggle, and the Republicans have. And frankly, that is a huge danger for the country. We are going to go into some very dark, long, dark years if we don't if we can't figure this stuff out. So.
It's this is the struggle, because we're having internal struggles within both parties, right? I mean, we're seeing that play out in the debate about whether we're going to shut the government down or not. McCarthy could work with Democrats, but he's trying to save his job, not the country. Reverend Dr. Yeary, your thoughts about this? I know you got your popcorn. I know you're the fanboy about this.
Well,
I mean, this is interesting, but I'm wondering what Trump is going to say to these workers. I'm wondering what Biden's going to say, and more than that, I'm wondering what they're going to do.
So, one, it's not just what the two will say to the workers. It's what they will say to the corporate leaders. I'm interested to hear how do you speak to both forces, the workers. I think it's less about what the two will use their pulpits for to speak to the congregation that's already assembled. How are they going to talk to the saints who's staying at home watching them, trying to see whether or not this is going to cause further disruption? Will we have choir rehearsals tonight, or will there be a boycott and a further expansion of the strike? That's one. But the other thing is, and I think we're missing maybe a different level of impact here for both of the major party candidates. The key to their second term, other than winning in November, is what's going to be the makeup of the Congress, the House and the Senate. So I started looking real quick to see what does union membership look like in some of these battleground states that not only will have an impact on the presidential election, but also have some very important Senate races going on. Among them, you've got union membership, you've got a Senate race in Ohio, you've got a major Senate race in Pennsylvania, you've got a major Senate race, TBD, even in West Virginia. In some ways, having these conversations with union constituents in states where they not only determine who's going to sit in the Oval Office, but who's going to sit in the House and Senate chambers is a big deal. So self-interest requires that they shore up these constituencies, because they not only have top of the ballot fights, they've got down ballot fights that are going to be absolutely unrelenting if they don't kind of build this kind of firewall against this regression. Imagine Biden wins the presidency, but he has two chambers of Republican leadership over of Constitution Avenue. That's going to be kind of gridlock for the kind of progressive policies that we are hoping he would do, right? It puts cold water on the hot fire, and the demand for police reform, for voting interest, for all of those, for economic change, all of those things going to be an issue. It puts cold water on the appointment of federal judges, where we're seeing the use of the federal courts to selectively challenge the progress that's been made around civil rights and equity issues. And so when we start looking at what's going to go in terms of who they're talking to, I think we also have to look at not only where they're standing, but the ripple effect that's going to flow from where they're standing to see if that's going to help. I would start looking at where are these Senate races, particularly. It's not a favorable Senate map for the Democrats this time. If they lose the upper chamber and you still have tight margins in the House, that's a disaster for the economic policy. What does the budget then look like? Do you start looking at cuts that are going to adversely impact the average worker who may not be a part? They may not be a part of a collective bargaining team. That's got to be part of the conversation and the calculus that we're all looking at across the board, because we're talking about the two gladiators at the top, but we got to talk about the grass that they're stepping on. What's happening in those statewide races that are going to come down to, who's sitting in the chambers to help pass the laws and move the agenda. If we don't have that conversation now and we wait till the last minute to build that momentum, we're going to have, I think, a deeper level of apathy if things just kind of stay where they are, and that's problematic. Low voter turnout is never good for an incumbent, never ever. So I think you gotta build your momentum. You got to build it across the board. You got to build it for other candidates. You got to establish some coattails. I think they both have to kind of figure that out. Otherwise, this not only is not going to move the needle, it may create bigger issues down the road in terms of really trying to mobilize folks to actually get engaged in the electoral process.
And
it's a big deal.
But you know what, Terry and Todd and Dwight, please speak to this. I'm going to have to run off the phone very quickly. I got a Zoom call. But, I think we also need to stop talking about age. People are not worried about Biden's age. They're worried about his health. Okay? I mean, Trump is, like they're about 2-3 years apart in age. One looks robust and ready for the fight. The other one does not. And I mean, heaven knows I pray for his health, because you remember in the late 80s and the 90s, early 90s, Terry, you and we would all remember Dwight and Todd, when he had brain aneurysms. I mean, he really struggled at one point, but he kept on working, kept on going, and thankfully he recovered splendidly. But he doesn't look very strong right now. I think that is what people are. Don't be misled by the corporate media. See, because that's not what they're talking about. Nobody cares about their age. I mean, the most popular elected official in the United States is Bernie Sanders. He is God's baby brother in terms of age. Dwight McKee, where do you see this going?
Well, I think Terry is right on today. Is that historically the energy in the Democratic Party has come from the progressive side, whether it was Jesse Jackson, whether it was Bernie Sanders, whether it was Elizabeth Warren. It's that energy generally comes from the progressive side. And by them quenching the fires of the progressive, they've also quenched the energy and the new energy that add to the party, add momentum to the party. And so the enthusiasm is not there right now because the progressive ideas have been pretty much laid to rest. And the young people and the ethnics and the unconventional, the non-whites, the working poor, many of those who are excited by the progressive ideas really don't feel like now they have any voice, anywhere to go. And so they don't bring the same enthusiasm. If they don't solve that problem, it's going to be a losing cause, because that's the crowd they need to win. Is that Obama crowd that were progressive and more progressive and enthusiastic, much more they found out than he was. But they thought he was that, and they got involved for that reason.
Well, we'll see where all of this goes, everybody. We'll see where all of this goes. I have no idea, because, boy, this political deck, Terry O'Neill, Reverend Attorney Terry O'Neill, Reverend Dr. Todd Deary, Dwight McKee. It has been scrambled. And we'll just have to see what's going to happen here. They're meeting. They're really going to be a day apart. So the question is, what's going to happen here? What's going to happen? I do not know. But I tell you what, the headlines have been fascinating, Terry and Todd and Dwight. They've been fascinating. So we'll have to see. And then, just because you're not mentioning Robert Kennedy and Cornel West and Marianne Williamson does not mean they're not running. It does not mean they do not have support. We're looking at November 2024 as if the primary season doesn't matter. See, that's what I mean, Terry, about totalitarianism and the autocracy. This is what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, and
it's a
I think
turn off.
for me, it is a turn off, and it is. One thing that I've in the back of my mind, Trump has not had a real primary fight. And that's always bad for a general election if the politician who is in the general didn't have a good, strong primary fight. Biden was stronger in 2020, in part because he had a really good primary fight. There was the Democratic primaries for the 2020 election were wonderful. A lot of big differences, a lot of strong personalities, a lot of honing your skills. And Biden is not having that fight right now, and that's going to hurt him.
But he didn't really. Hold on, Terry. He didn't really have it in 2016 either. He benefited from COVID. Oh, wait a minute, during 2020 either. He benefited from COVID, and then you had Obama and the Democratic establishment come in and shut down the primary season by taking out Bernie Sanders. That's what they did. And
yes, they did. But before that, there really was a fight.
Yeah, there was a fight, and he wasn't winning. He wasn't winning.
And he wasn't winning, right? I know. But by the time he gets up against Trump, he did very well. He won all of the debates. He did really well in the debates. He was by the time the general 2020 comes around, Biden is in fighting form. What worries me about his refusal, the Democrats' refusal to acknowledge Cornel West and Marianne Williamson and
Robert Kennedy
and Robert Kennedy Jr., is that, again, you're protecting your candidate from having to fight. That's not a good protection strategy.
That's the
one thing I will say
ever.
is that,
because first of all, Robert Kennedy and it's dumb, and Robert Kennedy and Cornel West can debate anybody, anytime, anywhere. It's just
but Robert Kennedy and Marianne, but Cornel West is not in the primary, right? So that's the problem. I would love to see Cornel West debating President Biden. That would be a substantive, important, right? But I think Robert is not serious. And Marianne Williamson, neither one of them is a serious candidate, and I don't see how Biden hones his skills against either one of them. But Cornel West is a serious guy, and I think it would be nice.
I think
to
Robert
see that.
Kennedy, when he starts laying out his facts, he's real serious. He's just been shut down.
But none of his facts are facts. I mean, his facts have been shown not to be facts.
No. A lot of them have been factual. And he has asked people, come up here and scientifically dispute what I've said about X, Y, and Z. Nobody gets it right 100% of the time. Yeah, I mean, they've said a lot of things that we have found to be demonstrably proven to be untrue. Efficacy of the medicines and on and on and on. I mean, they need to stop it. Open up the process so that people will trust the process. Now people don't trust it. And that to me is problematic. I got 1 minute before I go on this Zoom call. Dwight?
Really? Having Cornel West debate would be like watching the Pats play yesterday. It would be a bloodbath. They're not going to do that. I was saying that the energy on the Democratic Party comes from the left, and so Cornel would inherit that energy. But the energy from the Republicans come from the right, and they got the platform, and that's how come 3 or 4 of them are willing to be able to control the whole party. It's because their energy comes from the right, and they exalt their energy, the guys that control their energy, and give them high profile, high platform, high positions. We do just.
Yes, Dwight, go on.
We eat our job. And And that's why Trump is, is having such a field day right now in this and still leading the polls in spite of everything they've tried to do to stop him. That's why he's still at least a point ahead, it looks like, in the polling.
I'm wondering what we're doing. It's like you all. It's almost as if we're trying to help Trump, which is crazy to me. It's crazy. Everything we're doing is helping him. Mentioning him every 5 minutes, focusing on him. It's just everything we're doing. It's like when you want to neutralize someone, let alone eliminate them, you stop mentioning them, Terry. They do it all the time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, it's very annoying when it happens.
Every single day.
It's very, very
He's been at the top of every news story. I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, we learned that from being in Chicago with Mayor Daley was a gift. Mayor Richard J. Daley, because he taught you, Dwight, how to fight. You know that. Taught us how to fight. You don't mention your enemy. I mean, taught you how to neutralize. I mean, he did all of this stuff. So by the time Reverend came out of Chicago, he was bad because you dealt with the biggest political machine in the United States, and the most powerful one. That's how you get strong. And I don't know what I know what they're afraid of with all these people, and it is dangerous. In the primary seat, the Democrats need to have they need to have some real debates. They do, and people get upset about it. I hear you, but we're not going to win by not making someone strong, and you make someone strong by putting them in the fight. And when you get in that fight, then you are forced to really try to win. That's not what we're doing right now. We're not doing it. And that to me is like, whew, this is bad for business, y'all. This is bad for business. So I love you all to pieces. I'm going to let everyone go. Does anyone else have anything else they would like to say? Hello?
Just highlighting what is said, right? The pressure during the primaries when you're talking to states comes from the base, right? The pressure for the Dems is coming from the left. The pressure for the Republicans is coming from the right. And how do you respond to that and still come back when it's time to go to the general when you now have to play back towards the center? That's always the quandary. So do you overcommit during the primaries to be in the mix in terms of trying to get the nomination, only to have to come back and figure out how you're going to talk to folks who are not on the extremes of your particular party to get that the group doesn't participate in primaries. That's where I think Cornel West has a huge advantage in this opportunity, because he gets to speak without having to kind of go to the extremes of the left or the right. He gets to aim right for the target, which is speaking to the relevance of the moment. And I think that's going to be problematic for I think for the process in terms of the what folks are normally accustomed to. But I think it's going to be a benefit to bring in some value to what this election is going to be.
Well, I hope so. I hope and pray, and I hope that everybody gets a chance to speak. Because people don't have faith in the process, Terry, and that is the most dangerous position for all of us to be in, when people absolutely don't trust any of this. And that is where we are now. And I mean, work should be trusted. You have to be trustworthy. And there's a lot of work that we have to do. And so we'll see what's going to happen as these gentlemen go to. We'll see, how they're going to be received by the workers. Perhaps will they be in controlled situations where the workers will be handpicked? I don't know. We're going to see. We'll see. But the workers, they deserve support. They deserve support. So I hope that that is what they will get ultimately. As we talk about the politics of this, I hope that the workers will be supported, because they need our support. The workers are us. I love you, everybody. Thank you, Devin, for a great show. Everybody, I love you. I'm going to run on this Zoom call on my iPad, and I will talk to you tomorrow, everybody, on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless you. Love you.